Welcome, everyone. We will begin the webinar on battery charging technology and what is needed for flashing and ADAS calibrations on vehicles, hosted by Medco Tool. I'm Melissa Joles with RDA. Brad Buckner, Director of Business Development for Medco Tool, and Jim O'Hara with Clore Automotive are your presenters today. The presentation will take approximately 25 minutes. We are recording it and we'll post it on our YouTube channel. If you have questions during the webinar, you can type them in the chat box at the bottom right of the screen, and they will be answered during the presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So as it states in the title, what we're going to talk about today is the evolution of battery charging that has gone along with the changes in vehicle systems, both in terms of the battery types that are seen in the vehicles and the advanced vehicle technology that has been deployed on late model vehicles that are driving changes in battery technology and what you see on a battery charger. So before we really dig into the evolution of the advanced vehicle technologies such as ADAS and reprogramming that we see on late model vehicles, we're going to take one quick step back to talk about batteries. So batteries really have changed more in the last 15 to 18 years than they had in the prior 40 or 50 years. So when I started at Clore back in 2003, we mostly were worried about flooded batteries, whether they were maintenance-free or wet cell serviceable flooded batteries. Those two battery types dominated the vehicle car park in North America. And since about 2006, we've seen a proliferation of vehicle starting batteries to AGM, spiral wound, gel cells, as well as newer ones like start-stop AGM and enhanced flooded batteries. And what this has meant is battery charges have had to evolve along with the battery changes. And most specifically, it's really the AGM battery that's driven a tremendous amount of the change in battery technology. AGM batteries have become increasingly popular because of start-stop systems. So OEs have primarily turned to that battery type when they deploy a start-stop system in a vehicle, which we're all at this point very familiar with. You pull up to a stoplight or a stop sign, bring the vehicle to a complete stop, and the engine shuts down. Take your foot off the brake, the engine resumes power. We first saw this only on hybrids, and now we see this on a wide variety of internal combustion engine vehicles. And that requirement has required changes in the batteries used for those systems. And the dominant battery type for those systems in North America over the last 12 years has been the AGM battery. And the AGM battery is very different. It is a lead acid battery, but it's very different than a traditional flooded battery. And really, we like to say and all of the industry would agree, you really can't use a traditional battery charger on an AGM battery. And a spiral wound battery is just a variant of an AGM battery. These batteries are very sensitive to voltage. So what we have to do is precisely control voltage when we're servicing those batteries, or we're running the risk that we're going to damage those batteries. With our Prologix line of professional battery chargers from Solar, we can service all lead acid battery types, flooded, AGM, spiral wound, deep cycle, marine batteries, and service them effectively and efficiently. We have multi-space charging with precise voltage control again. So an AGM battery, about 14.65 volts at 70 degrees Fahrenheit is about as much voltage as that battery wants to see. So we're going to precisely control that throughout the multi-phase process of the charger, which is exactly what these batteries want. They want a constant current bulk charging phase, a constant voltage absorption phase, and that's exactly what Prologix delivers, along with temperature compensation. So we're going to manage each battery differently based on the environment in which it's being charged. And the other big thing that Prologix delivers is a forced start mode. So one of the big things we hear in the field is, my customers don't like smart chargers. And the reason that they don't like smart chargers predominantly is because of how they handle dead batteries. And by that, we mean totally dead batteries, 0.0 volts or 0.5 volts. Every smart charger requires the ability to see battery polarity in order to send power to the clamps, which brings up what I call the dead battery dilemma. I bought a charger because I need to service batteries, but my charger won't turn on because my battery's totally dead. We don't have that problem with all of our Prologix units. So if you're using a Prologix charger and you encounter a completely dead battery, the operator simply needs to confirm that they're properly connected and the charger is set up properly, hold the start or go button down for 3 seconds, and let it go. They'll hear a relay click, and the charger will engage the battery and essentially start off as a manual charger, forcing power into the battery till it goes above the threshold, which is about 1 volt. And once it does, it'll turn back into its automatic charger with all the safety features. But it's a huge selling advantage for Prologix and also a huge simplicity for the customer. The way the customer used to overcome this problem with the smart charger was to lug out another battery or a jump starter and connect it to the dead battery to trick the charger into sensing polarity. That's totally unnecessary with Prologix. As long as you confirm you're properly connected and your only problem is a totally dead battery, you can hold the start button down for 3 seconds, let it go, and the charger will engage the battery. And on to the main topic of what we're here to talk about today, which is power supply mode. So as vehicle technology has changed, so has battery charger technology. Not only, as we just talked about with the Prologix chargers, the types of batteries we can charge, but the actual functions that you find on a battery charger today are very different than they were 10, 12 years ago. So in the case of Prologix chargers, we have power supply mode on most of our full powered chargers. And what that means is we're going to supply power to the vehicle to maintain a stable, steady voltage on the vehicle throughout so that the vehicle can be serviced doing a variety of different applications. And we're providing a beneficial, helpful voltage environment for all those other actions to take place. And those can include advanced technology like ADAS support, programming support, but also things like repairs, maintenance, as well as diagnostics. And we'll get into that in just a moment. So as we look at ADAS recalibration support, why do we need power supply mode? The answer is that most of your ADAS recalibrations are being done with the key in the on position. So if we don't have a power supply connected to the vehicle, that battery is going to get drained and it's going to derail the recalibration process. And again, we need a power supply, not a battery charger for this operation. They're very different. A battery charger is going to make its way through its progression of charging phases based on what the condition of the state of charge of the battery is. In power supply mode, we just want to provide a steady flow of power. In the case of the PL2320, we're going to goal seek to 14.1 volts. It's a set voltage level. We're going to provide anywhere from 0 to 20 amps to maintain that voltage level. So if the vehicle only needs 2 amps to hold that voltage, because very little is going on at the moment, we're going to give 2 amps. If it needs 18 amps, we're going to give 18 amps. So we only give the vehicle what it needs to hold 14.1 volts. That's the essence of power supply mode. And again, for ADAS recalibrations, the PL2320, which is our 20 amp maximum charger, 20 amp maximum power supply, is ideal. It covers all ADAS recalibrations for the North American car park. So it provides enough power to manage all vehicles. And as well, besides ADAS support, the PL2320 is an excellent service bay tool for repairs as well as diagnosis. So if we get into diagnostics and a vehicle comes into the shop and we have an intermittent electrical system fault, that's a perfect case for why we need power supply mode. So I'm going to connect the charger to the battery, put it in power supply mode, and therefore I'm taking the battery out of the equation as I go through my checks of all the system components to check for proper operation. In this case, on this slide, we talk about diagnosing relay function. So one of the ways that I can simplify this task is by taking the battery out of the equation. Is the relay not functioning because it's not getting the power that it should be getting from the battery? Do I have a battery problem? I don't have to worry about that if I have power supply connected to the battery. So this simplifies the diagnostic process significantly when you're chasing down an intermittent electrical system fault. Similarly, for repairs of electronic subsystems like an electronic brake job, power supply is essential. If you started an electronic brake job within 20 or 30 minutes, the battery would be dead because you're firing modules and you're doing a bunch of other tasks that are going to put demand on the battery. And without support for the battery, that repair is going to get stopped, derailed, whatever you'd like to call it. So by connecting a power supply, you're making it much more easy to do that task and make it much more efficient and effective. So that's the PL2320, 20 amps max power. So again, great for ADAS support, great for diagnosis, great for repair and maintenance tasks. Not
Jim,
great
Brad,
for,
this is Brad.
yes.
I've got a question on that. Real quick as well, I just found an error on my sales flyer. So if you would, don't show that at the end. I'll just verbally talk about it to the group. But let's say we got a battery that's completely dead and
Yes.
we need to charge it. I know a lot of these smart chargers are not capable of doing that. And I don't think the PL2310 is capable, but the PL2320, I believe, is. Is that correct? And if so,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah, so I mentioned that a moment ago, but all the Prologix chargers can all manage totally dead batteries. So when you connect to the battery and the charger will not turn on because it can't sense polarity because the battery's below the voltage level required, which is about 1 volt. If the operator confirms that they're properly connected to the battery and the charger is set up properly, and the only problem is that the battery is totally dead, you can hold the start button down for 3 seconds and release it. You'll hear a relay click and you'll see the action light turn on to show that you're charging, and the charger will start charging. It's essentially turning the charger, forcing it to start as a manual charger. And then as soon as we go above that threshold, which will be just seconds because it's only about 1 volt, it'll turn back into an automatic charger and have all the safety features kick in.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And here's a great example of the PL2320 being used to support ADAS by the folks at Babcock. So they ran this video recently, and this had nothing to do with Clor Automotive. It was a video that they did for Hunter and Bosch showing their ADAS system, but this is a great example. So here's Hunter and Bosch using Babcock's as a vehicle to get their story out to the marketplace. But in the Babcock's garage, Hunter and Bosch connected a PL2320 to this vehicle, which tells us 2 things. One is they obviously really like this as a power supply to support ADAS, but more importantly, even than that, is the fact that here's Hunter and Bosch demoing their ADAS equipment, and they're running the power supply, which is absolutely essential. So anytime that you sell in a ADAS solution to your customers, you should always address the power supply need because they go hand in hand. Regardless of whatever system is adopted, a power supply is required to perform those tasks. And then separately, as we move up in power, we have units that address the need to support vehicle reprogramming. And the reason why we make this distinction is the lowest OE requirement for power for reprogramming is GM at 55 amps. And then it goes up from there, and BMW is kind of at the top, hovering around 100 amps. So therefore, the PL2320 is a great product. It's an amazing power supply. It's super clean, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And it's very similar to the unit you see here, but it doesn't have enough power really to support the OE recommended amount of current required to support programming. So therefore, we do not recommend a PL 2320 and certainly even more so a PL 2310 to support programming. We have 2 dedicated units. This unit here is for automotive. It's the PL 6100 that we recommend for programming. And first, just to identify this opportunity. So our estimate, and this is about a year ago, we put this estimate together, but we did a lot of research, and we estimate that between 40 and 80,000 shops, starting from about a year ago, are going to have to deploy programming capabilities internally in their shop that they don't have today. So we're about a year into that, so maybe we've cut those numbers down a little, but not by a ton. There's a huge wave coming, and there's a big reason for this. Vehicle technology and repair has changed so much in the last 10 years that if you were servicing 2010 to 2015 vehicles, maybe 1 in 10 mechanical repairs would have a programming component in them. Today's vehicles, 2017, 18 and forward, that percentage is so much higher. Maybe 1 in 2, maybe 1 in or 2 in 3 even, 2/3 of the vehicles. So anywhere from 40 to 60% of the vehicles are likely to have a programming component as part of an overall mechanical repair. What this means for shops is they can no longer really rely on the 2 strategies that they predominantly used in the past to solve these problems, which is send it back to the dealership for the programming work, or to bring in a mobile diagnostic technician 2 or 3 days a week to just troubleshoot the programming requirements. The reality is that for the vast majority of shops, these strategies are not going to work going forward, because it will kill their profitability and it'll kill their throughput. They will not be able to move vehicles through their shop quickly enough if they're jobbing this work out. They'll still job out those most recalcitrant vehicles, the ones that they've worked on for 2 or 3 days, and they bring in, you know, a troubleshooter or a super high-end diagnostic technician to come in and do that. But the vast majority of the programming work that they're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to have to do themselves. And that means they're going to have to deploy diagnostic tools to do the work, but they're also going to have to deploy a power supply, and specifically a flashing power supply for module reprogramming. And again, really, that's all about power. So we'll jump right into this unit here. This PL 6100 is designed for automotive and light duty vehicle shops. It's a 100 amp power supply on demand, just like we spoke about on the PL 2320, except instead of maxing out at 20 amps, it maxes out at 100 amps. It also is a 60, 40, and 10 amp charger, but we see this unit primarily being used as a power supply for vehicle module reprogramming. In the case of this unit, you have adjustable voltage control. So you control the output voltage from 13.1 to 14.9 volts in 1/10 of a volt increments. The reality is that with all these different makes and models, the OE requirement is different. So a Chrysler might require the tech to set the output to 13.7 volts, whereas Volvo might want 14.4 volts. So by providing adjustable voltage, you're really providing a tool to your customer that allows them to exactly meet the OE requirement for the make and model that they're servicing at that moment. In addition, our Prologix chargers are super stable. This is the whole point of a power supply, is to create a stable electrical environment for the vehicle in which the reprogramming tasks to take place. So what makes up a stable environment? Really, it comes down to 2 things. One is we want to supply super clean power. Similar to the PL 2320 we showed earlier, our flashing power supplies have almost no ripple. In the case of these, it's less than 60 millivolts of ripple, which is really, really close to a DC power supply. It's about as clean of an output as you could possibly get and still be plugged into the wall. In addition, the other aspect of what makes for a stable power supply is how quickly we respond to changes in load demand. So when I'm doing, let's say, a Mercedes reflash, and I've got my unit connected, and let's just say I'm set to 14.2 volts, and I'm doing my reflash or reprogramming of the modules that are required for whatever the vehicle's saying needs to be reprogrammed. And let's say it takes 8 amps to hold my 14.2 volt voltage target. And suddenly a fan kicks on or a second module starts programming, and suddenly the demand on the vehicle is much higher in order to maintain that 14.2 volts. Well, Prologix is going to respond to that change in load demand super quickly, almost instantaneously. We call it rapid load response technology. We're 2 to 3 times faster than any other product we've benchmarked so far. And what that means is really we're holding the battery at 14.2. Now there's a sudden increase in demand. So the battery's voltage is going to want to slough off slightly while we recover it as we increase our output to meet that demand. So what we want to do is decrease the depth of the slough as well as the duration of it. So with Prologix, that drop off in voltage on the battery during that increase in peak demand is almost negligible. We're measuring it in milliseconds as opposed to seconds. And I'll show you a little graphic on that in a moment. In addition, the units, both units, and I'll show you the other unit at the end of the presentation, but they have 13-foot cable leads with angled heavy-duty clamps and welding cable connectors. So this is really important too. So if you have this expensive piece of equipment out there in the field and a tech damages one of the output cables, it's very easy to repair the output cables in the field without shipping the unit back. It's a huge savings of hassle for both you and your customer. And as I noted, so here's a couple quick graphics. One is showing the output. The blue line on this graph here is the output, showing that there's almost no ripple current going through. In addition, this is us against a competitive unit going from roughly 15 amps of demand up to roughly 70 amps of demand. And as you can see, the competitive unit is taking 2 to 3 seconds to do that, whereas the Prologix unit is taking less than a second, about 600 milliseconds. So we're much more responsive to changes in load demand than any competitive unit we've seen out in the field that we've tested in our lab. And I'm going to show you a quick video review from P10 Magazine on the PL6100.
Hi, this is Scott Brown with Diagnostic Network with a P10 review of the Prologix PL6100. This is a battery maintainer for programming. Will support up to 100 amps. So when you first turn the unit on, you'll see a boot up and we land in supply mode. So in supply mode, you can now dial in your voltage through these control buttons here. You also have battery charge mode, so you can switch to that. Whenever you switch to charge mode, it defaults to the AGM battery. So if you don't have an AGM, you need to switch back to the standard style. You have 3 levels of amperage here to choose from, either 10 amps, 40 amps, or 60 amps. You've got a voltmeter output telling me what's going on with the battery currently, because we're not charging yet. We can also toggle over 2% of charge to understand where the battery's at. This one obviously is charged at 100%, but to begin charging, you would select this. System's going to do some checks and then engage and start charging. The clamps are also very nice, high quality connections. But what's really impressive here is that I've connected the scope, picoscope here, to take a look at the AC and the DC noise ratio. And as you can see in these 2 waveforms here, the signal is very, very clean, which is exactly what you want whenever you're performing programming operations. Anyhow, that's a review of the PL6100 from ProLogic.
So, so as you can see, so Scott Brown is a shop owner. He's also the president of Diag.net, which is a forum for technicians from all around the world where they trade, recommendations and tips for solving their most difficult repair situations, full of diagnostic technicians. Scott's also one of the best trainers in the industry and a technical editor for P10 magazine. So he's a very, very knowledgeable person. And just to kind of reiterate kind of what he said just now about how clean this is, when we were in development on the ProLogics chargers, we sent about 14 of these units out during the development process to some of the best mobile diagnostic technicians in the country. And almost to a person, they immediately took the unit out of the box, connected it to a vehicle, and did exactly what Scott did, which is connect their scope to the output and graph the output. And many of them sent, 8, 9 of them sent scope captures back to me saying that this is the cleanest power supply they've ever encountered in their experience. So with ProLogics, you're getting great power up to 100 amps, handles all vehicles. You're also getting the ability to manage voltage to whatever the OE requirement is, from 13.1 to 14.9 volts, which more than covers all OE requirements in North America. You're getting a great battery charger and a super convenient product as well, with 13-foot leads, the angled clamps. And one of the things Scott didn't say in this video, when we sent him a unit for testing, one of the things he loved the most is he uses his PL6100 both for reprogramming support and to teach his ADAS clinics. And one of the things he loves about the clamp on the PL6100 and PL6800 is that it's an angled clamp. So when you're doing ADAS support, you can have the clamps connected to the battery and still put the hood down on the vehicle so you can do your ADAS recalibrations of your forward-facing camera, your forward-facing radar that could be mounted in the rearview mirror without interruption. So lots of great features on those units. And then this is the tandem unit to the PL6100. This is the PL6800. It's designed for fleet operations or heavy-duty service operations. And the only difference between these two units is the maximum charging rate. The PL6800 has a max rate of 100 amps, which is ideal for 4 battery and 8 battery packs. So from a power supply standpoint, these two units are identical. From a charging standpoint, that's the only thing that's different. This is a heavy-duty charger for heavy-duty shops that are facing the need to charge multi-battery packs, whereas the PL6100 right here is for automotive shops, because we really don't want that heavy-duty unit in an automotive shop where they're going to have the chance to put a 100-amp charger on a single battery. But for 4 battery packs and 8 battery packs that you would find in Class 8 vehicles, this is an ideal charger. In my opinion, best heavy-duty charger in the market, plus it's a great power supply. So, and when I go out in the field, I see as much need for reprogramming support on heavy duty as I do on automotive, which was a surprise to me 3-4 years ago. When we first developed this line of product, we primarily were focused on it as an automotive product. But really, as we've dug more and more into this and developed this product, there's just as much need for reprogramming support in the heavy duty world, whether it's with Class 8 over-the-road vehicles or whether it's for municipal vehicles like garbage trucks, fire apparatus. Across the board in heavy duty, there's just as much need for reprogramming and reprogramming support in the form of a power supply as there is in automotive. So I would like to open it up to questions if anyone has any questions at this time.
I don't see any questions, but I just also want to let everybody know, I will send you the promotions, a copy of this presentation. Again, we recorded it, so when we get the recording, we'll send that out. And I will send Brad and Jim's contact information. So if you have any questions on any of these units or anything that Jim went over today, you can reach out to them directly. And I just want to thank you, Jim, for doing this presentation today, and Brad for hosting it. And thanks everybody for joining us.